This is episode 2 of Yella in the Cella.
Is this episode 1?
No, it's episode 2. It turns out, folks, it's not really going to be in the Cella. The easiest way, technologically speaking, is to just sort of do it like this. Anyways, Flynn Rector in the place. Welcome to the show, Flynn.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. It's a meeting of the minds, and this is the first one. So basically, we're just gonna chat a little bit and see how it goes. And it's actually kind of cool because I can look at you on here.
Yeah.
And sort of
you
talk to you.
Look at the computer.
Now we were talking a little bit about technology. You were.
I was waxing poetic on technology.
You were talking a little bit about technology and the infestation of. It seems like we might have similar views about some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
Could you reiterate a little bit of what you were saying before we move the show up here?
Yeah, so we were kind of talking about how as our society has become more technologically advanced and cities have gotten bigger, people are removed from like the daily requirements of sustenance. So we were I was talking about I was on this farm, and I realized when I went to the farm that I've eaten like X thousands of chicken breasts and chicken eggs, but I've never until then I had never been around chickens. So I got to take care of chickens every day and clean the eggs, clean the afterbirth or whatever you would call it off of eggs before you took them to market and stuff like that. And just kind of got me thinking about what else do I depend on every day that I have no idea how it actually works. So we were kind of talking about that kind of stuff. And to my mind, in some ways, the further you are from the process by which you gain a product, it's not a benefit to you to have that in place necessarily. So it's cool to be able to just move into a house and have shelter, but at the same time, if you have to fix your house, you have to spend a bunch of money and play somebody else's game to get it fixed because you don't know how to build a house, or you don't know how to fix your car, or you don't know how to dress game or something like that. So it seems to me that it's less useful to you to have all of this product available to you that you can just spend some money on versus actually knowing how to get it and harvest it.
So what I was going to ask you downstairs, but then we kind of shifted formats, was what do you think about the idea of someone that moves into a house and rather than builds a house or works on a garden or dresses an animal or even fixes a car, they move into the house and they set up an easel and they paint a beautiful work of art. Now, they're eating microwave TV dinners and they're calling in for all of their services that they need. They're a product of this modern culture.
Yeah.
But isn't there something to be said on the other side for you can kind of work within the system to still do extraordinary things with your time that aren't necessarily useful?
Yeah.
But, how do you feel about that?
So, you're kind of saying, the capabilities we have to live without having those processes that are so time consuming.
Yeah, to sort of free up more time so that you can create
focus on art
or whatever your trip may be.
I would say just obviously art is important, but look how much art is just fucking shit, right? I think people have more free time to concentrate on stuff like that, and there are some amazing works coming out and amazing
Did you see that?
No.
Sorry.
What?
We were in a glitch. It was tight.
Glitch mode. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of cool shit going on. I think there's this I'm not saying it's a surplus population that creates art. I think there's a lot of jobs and things like that where the amount of time you would spend harvesting your own food or building your own house and shit like that would negate the amount of time that you could spend focusing on art or medicine or what have you. But I think there have been plenty of artists and doctors and stuff in the past who like used those skills to create better art and medicine and stuff. So like the Prussic knot, which is something that they use in like rock climbing, was invented. It's like a knot that was invented by this guy who was a doctor and like a concert violinist, and he wound up inventing this knot for rock climbing, right? So, here's this guy. I think
Was he a rock climber himself, or?
Yeah, he wrote a book on it in like the 1930s. He was like, he wound up like joining the German army during World War II or some shit because he was German. But yeah, he was like a doctor and like a concert violinist who enjoyed this pursuit so much of like, in part just like athletically, he liked to climb mountains, and he was able to, create something that everybody uses the world over, right? Or like, like John Muir or somebody like that or Thoreau, So take Thoreau. So Thoreau loved nature and spent a bunch of time in it, and probably had all of these skills based on that, right? Like being able to survive in the wild kind of thing, but wound up being one of the first people to sort of popularize naturalism and
through art,
through like poetry and like discourses of philosophy. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive to have a situation where somebody needs all of this free time and free basically free product to be able to make something good. But at the same time, I mean, I can see how living in a situation where you don't have to produce all of this stuff yourself can allow you to focus on things which do benefit society. I just think at the lowest common denominator level of each person in society, I think we would be a better society if more people had more direct input and exercise in what they were getting for themselves.
Or even just the gumption to work through it, like you're
Right,
saying.
yeah.
People that when something's wrong, they don't try to solve the problem. They go to their phone and look it up on the internet. You don't necessarily have to know exactly how to solve the problem, but just sort of the will to try, or to
start the problem-solving process
on a physical
itself,
level.
right? Yeah. So like, I was kind of talking about this the other day too, where it's like, it's amazing that we have literally at our fingertips. You can pull out your smartphone and learn whatever factoid you want about any subject without any underlay of understanding about the subject. So it's this whole you make subject matter experts who don't really understand the subject. They just understand the facts behind the subject, right? So say I want to learn about how CDs are produced or something like that, so I can go on Wikipedia or whatever and read about CD manufacturing, but I can just not even know how a CD actually works, right? I can just get a couple of random snippets of information and then know that much about the subject without understanding the rest of it. And I think that's kind of the same river of thought. It's just like I have this problem, and now I'm gonna, without really trying to take the time to understand the problem, I'm just gonna find the fix, right? I don't need to know the neighborhood. I just need to know how to get to this one spot.
So do you think that there will ever be sort of a backlash against this dependence on technology?
Yeah, I think there is right now. I think I think there are people right now that I've met that are like, getting back into things like organic farming or like, getting a college degree and then working in the trades on purpose so that they know how to do shit like that. So, yeah, and I think like there'll be a large amount of people who just remain in the other way of thinking because it's fucking easy, and I think there are people who remain in it because it's part of consumerism is like having the next phone or whatever, and so there's like that aspect of it too. But I think there's also going to be people who are like, hey, like I do want to know how to fucking raise crops or fix my own car and buy an earlier model car specifically so that I can work on it, right? I think that's happening a lot right now too. So, yeah.
So there's still a chance.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's still a chance, but I mean, I'm not super optimistic.
I mean, I don't.
Like, I don't think anything cataclysmic is going to happen based on the fact that fewer people know how to, frame a house. But I do think that it's like a sign that as a society we're becoming more and more dependent and more childlike, and we want our government or someone to provide for us.
I feel like not necessarily cataclysmic in the sense of like natural disaster or a total upheaval of society, but if you look around, to me it's almost like the damage is already done. If you go out to eat and you see a couple sitting at a restaurant table and they're both just looking at their phones or not even talking to one another, you know what I mean? Here we are ironically doing a webcast with all this technology.
We're not
actually. I'm looking at you though. So it's
so I mean, I don't really want to even get into the whole like the lack of like personal contact thing because I think it's like a different argument. Like I think.
Well, this can go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I just haven't really thought about it enough to really make an informed argument about it. But I mean, it is weird to see that, and obviously you do see it. And then it's weird to read about in the news, like some chick died because she fell down a manhole because she was texting, which fucking happens probably every week here. Or like gets hit by a car because they were texting or some shit like that. So, I mean, I think that is like a drain on our society. It's like the head down generation kind of thing, for, many different reasons. But, yeah, so I think.
Have you lived in other cities in the United States other than Seattle?
Not for any extended period of time.
Because I feel like Seattle is sort of the crux of what we're talking about as far as the lack of human interaction.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, at the one hand, it's so revered in such an intelligent society because you have all this technology here and the university and so forth. But on the other hand, it creates a culture where people don't, like you're saying, people don't really need to know about anything because it's at their fingertips, so they can just kind of zoom around through life and be it's such a hip city that it's almost like people don't know shit. You know what I mean? I found.
I think I mean, like, living with East Coasters and like, pretty much any other friend I have who wasn't raised here, there's like that Seattle freeze thing.
The 206 freeze.
The 206 freeze, and I think a lot of that actually comes from culturally, so like, I mean, most of the people who I think, at least in my peer group, who have come from other places, live in like the North End or whatever. So a lot of the people that they hang out with who are from Seattle or whatever and have that freeze thing happen are, white people who have lived here for a while. And culturally, in North Seattle, there were a lot of like Norwegian people, right? So, who are like, somewhat taciturn to begin with, like Norwegian Lutheran people from Ballard or whatever, that's pretty standard, right? Like it's it's the kind of culture where you don't actually put a lot of emotion into things, right? So I think part of the Seattle freeze is just cultural. I think it's just like as a result of who were the settlers here and what ethnic groups were here, kind of thing. And then I think it's also cultural from like the West being settled, right? So like, keeping to your own business kind of shit, because East versus West kind of thing. The West was lawless for a lot more time than the East, or like lawless more recently. So like we had a gold rush in the 1890s here.
And there's physically more space.
Yeah,
you know what
more
I mean?
space, so there's
You're
probably a
not
psychological
right on top of each
component
other.
to it. Yeah, and you could probably get killed just as easily in New York for like saying the wrong thing or whatever at the same time, but probably out west there was more reason not to say shit because shit like that can go down so easily. You know what I mean? Like like you watch like Deadwood or a show like that. It's like bloody and violent, and I'm sure it was like that here. Probably at the turn of the century, just because there was less civilization out here. So I think it's also a throwback to that, like minding your own business kind of shit.
Have you ever seen a film called McCabe and Mrs. Miller, starring Warren Beatty?
No.
It's about the Pacific Northwest being settled
Yeah,
around that time period.
Yeah.
Leonard Cohen did the soundtrack.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I recently heard.
Before his voice got deep.
That's cool.
It's pretty interesting.
I recently heard the original version of Outlaw Man, which was this song by the Eagles on Desperado. Have you heard that song before?
I've not really fucked with the Eagles too much.
So I can understand that. So the original was by this guy named David Blue, who was like a contemporary of David Cohen, or Leonard Cohen, excuse me, and he's one of these guys who's like hanging out with like Janis Joplin and all these other people, but he was a young heart attack, right? So he has all this catalog of music that's very rare and hard to find, super good stuff, and like he's one of these people who was like should have made it but just died too young.
What's
David Blue?
What's that Eagles song with the beat that the Beastie Boys eventually used on the song High Plains Drifter? It's like boom boom, boom boom, boom boom, boom boom, boom.
I know the song, but I don't know. I actually didn't fuck with the Eagles too much either.
I never knew that was an Eagles song my whole life, and I always loved that beat. But and then I recently heard a version of it with like Don Henley singing, and I was like,
all right, here's one. So I heard this playing out of a fucking car the other day. What's the Notorious B.I.G. song, or what's the sample from where it's like, Notorious, no, Notorious. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
That's obviously a sample from some fucking 70s or 80s shit, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't know the where it comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It'd be cool if there was like a website or something you could figure out all of the samples on.
There's a really rad box set that you can get from the Seattle Public Library. I want to say it's called Rare 60s Grooves or something like that. It's a box set. It has all this stuff. Eugene McDaniels. Just all this old 60s and 70s sort of like soul and blaxploitation music that we now know as, it's like a lexicon or a roadmap of like shit that's been sampled from hip hop now.
Yeah. Sure.
I had the whole thing. It got it was not backed up. It was on my iPod. My iPod got stolen, so I don't have it anymore. But 60. It's some generic title like Rare 60s Grooves. It's a big green box, about 4 discs.
That's cool.
And it's pretty fucking kick-ass.
Right on.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's cool listening to some of that shit. I was into dub in high school for a while, right? And it was really interesting to hear, like, like you look at like the soundtrack of The Harder They Come or something like that, and you realize that all the beats to these songs have been done and redone like a fucking billion times.
Yeah.
And like the original was like, 10 years old at the time that it was redone in that way. It's cool.
Oops. So there are merits to technology
Yeah, absolutely.
to bring it full circle.
I was never arguing that there aren't merits. I just think that like before you should concentrate on just using your technology to benefit your life, you should probably have an understanding of the things that make it possible, or you should be equipped to handle things without technology, I guess you could say.
Well, one of the rad things about human beings is, it's a cliche, but we do adapt. You know, so this is just sort of a phase that we're all kind of wired into this one particular trip right now. And as an experiment, or like, if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have access to your telephone or the internet, at first it's a little awkward, but I find that you can pretty readily adapt and get by and do what you need to do, just as one sort of cursory.
Although I'm not
example.
sure if that's indicative of the whole population. I'll wager I know a few people who probably couldn't handle it, not having a smartphone, or could handle it but just wouldn't really get much done.
Yeah,
wouldn't be able to get from point A to point B without lots of effort. So.
Well, we're not going to name any names.
Yeah.
Flynn, I thank you for your time.
Yeah, hey, thank you, man.
The first ever guest on Yella and Cella. Hopefully,
happy to be the inaugural guest.
Hopefully this went well.
Yeah.
Flynn is a high five. Is aficionado the right word, or?
Yeah.
You're a proponent of a proper high five.
I would say I'm a proponent of a proper high five, and I'm still actually kind of a high five novice. I'll miss him every once in a while.
Someone told me that the secret is to look at the other person's elbow. Have you heard that?
No.
Like if you look at the other person's elbow, you'll do a solid high five.
All right. Okay.
So
learn something new every day.
Fucking A.
We should start a high five channel.
Yeah. On the next.
So elbow first. Elbow. All right.
Yeah, I don't know. This is pretty raw and maybe lame, but I think there's some interesting tidbits in here. So thanks everybody for checking it out. Yella in the Cella, myself, Yella and Michael J, Flynn Rector in the place, and like I said, we're not in the Cella. I had a different vision of the podcast originally, but hey, thanks for checking it out, and we'll see you next time. Peace.